Well, hello. It is 7 o'clock p.m. on the East Coast. So I just want to get started and let you know that I'm back again. This is Copper Penny Coaching. This is Laquita Joseph with Copper Penny Coaching. And tonight we are going to talk about rebuilding trust after infidelity. This is a topic that I decided to discuss because I had a conversation this week with someone and we were talking and just kind of talking through trust. And so I thought that this would be a great topic for us to have tonight. So again, this is a little bit more heavier than, talking about getting your groove back, but it is such a necessary conversation and topic. I believe that, there are other people out here who really want to hear about this. And so this topic I'm going to take you through is a 3-step process to getting or regaining trust in your relationship. So the first thing that needs to happen, so before you can do anything else, before you can even consider the possibility of regaining trust and rebuilding trust, or even rebuilding the relationship, the spouse that has stepped outside of the relationship must first be sincerely remorseful and apologetic. So they have to come to you, they have to be sorry for what they have done, and it has to be sincere. That's the first thing that has to happen before anyone can move forward in this situation. The second step is that the two spouses have to come together and decide whether they are really ready for forgiveness. So we'll talk a little bit more about what type of forgiveness and what that really means. The third step in the process is that finally both spouses have to be willing to rebuild the relationship, rebuild the trust and the relationship. Because even after someone they're sorry or they've been apologetic, or even you've decided to forgive, doesn't necessarily mean that you're going to want to move forward with the relationship or with trusting once again, at least not with that person. So those are the 3 steps to getting to rebuild trust in your relationship. So before I jump into that, I just want to say hello to those of you who are out there. I see you. I'm going to wave back. I see Rhonda. I see you out there. And I see Marquita out there. So I'm saying hello to you all tonight. And to everyone else who decides to join later, or if you're watching this video at home, I just want to say hello, and I hope that you get something out of this talk tonight. Okay, so let's jump into the meat of everything. Hi, Pam. I see you out there too, girl. So let's jump into the meat of this. So infidelity, first of all, right, is hard to rebuild trust after infidelity. But it can be done. Marriages go through issues with infidelity all the time. And sometimes they come out better than they were before. And so I'll give you a stat, there's a small stat that says that there's between 6 to 25% rate of infidelity in marriages. So 6 to 25% is infidelity. So there are a lot of people who are dealing with this or who have dealt with this and have made the choice and the decision to move forward and to remain in their marriage. So another thing about infidelity, and I talked about this last week in my talk when we talked about how to know that you're in a failing marriage. Well, how to know if you're in a failing marriage, one of those things is that if there's infidelity, that's a symptom of the fact that you're having issues with your marriage. So by the time there's infidelity, there were plenty of other times that there were situations and issues that really needed to be addressed before they got to this point. But regardless of that, it's no excuse for the cheating, for the person who has cheated. It is no excuse whatsoever. You know, something else that comes to mind is what happens to when you find out that someone is cheating. Sometimes it's because you didn't really believe it would happen to you or to your marriage, or there were signs that you just disregarded, or maybe you kind of had an inkling that, you know, I don't know if this other person is really here for the reason that they say they are, or are they really here because they're really trying to entice this other person. And so sometimes you have to pay attention to that. And as a couple, being able to communicate and talk about those things when you feel that there are situations where, you know, I don't know that this person is really just here because they're looking for your help to teach them how to do something, but more so is that they just want to be around you and have that time. And so eventually, you know, that whoever that other spouse is, they can disregard it. But if you're already having issues in the relationship, and then you have another person who comes along and they're there all the time and you're helping them, then somehow along the way, things go awry, and it can happen. So you get to infidelity. So let's talk about, you know, step one. So that person who has stepped outside of the marriage, they first have to be remorseful and apologetic. And so they talking about the reasons that they cheated. So that person, first of all, why did they cheat? Some people cheat because of physical connection. Some people want something new. Some people feel like they're not getting their needs met, or they're not being satisfied sexually, or, you know, or sometimes they're just not managing stress, or the relationship, the couple themselves are not managing their stress within the relationship. So therefore somebody decides to get relief someplace else. Long story short, right? So yeah, so they do that, but that's no excuse for the cheating. So as the cheating spouse, first of all, you need to talk to yourself to understand why is it that you cheated. You need to understand yourself and understand why you did that, because if you are remorseful and you truly are sorry, you are apologetic about what has happened, then you want to get to the root of it, because you don't want to hurt that person again. Because you have hurt someone that you care a lot about, that you love enough that you married them. You said that you would spend forever with this person, and yet you have done something to destroy that relationship that you have. So if you are truly sorry, you will take the time to do the work to understand what is really going on with you, because it's about you as a person. It's not about the other person. It's about you, and you have to dig and do that work. So once you go through that, and first of all, it's also so that you don't repeat the same behavior over again, that you don't go down that same path, do the same exact thing, and wind up in the same place begging for forgiveness once again. So the next steps for this person is, first, you need to cut off all contact with the other person. That means if you have to block their number, block them on Facebook or all your social media or wherever, block them in your email, you need to delete their phone number, you need to delete whatever apps you might have been using with them to communicate, you know. All of those things you need to do. You need to sever ties with that relationship. If you cannot sever ties with that relationship, if that cheating spouse can't do that, then they are not ready to move to the next step. There is no way, there's no path to trust or rebuilding the relationship if you cannot do that first. That's first and foremost. Second is apologizing. And sometimes that get flip-flopped, right? So a lot of times, someone wants to apologize first because they think, oh, I apologize, I'm sorry, and all these things. But the first thing that needs to happen is you need to cut off that relationship. Apologizing doesn't do anything. It doesn't mean anything if you are still communicating with the other person, if you're still having conversations or some sort of interaction with them, then your apology really means nothing to that other person. So you have to apologize, you have to be sincere, you have to be open, you have to be honest when being remorseful. Also, you have to be transparent. This means that now you need to become an open book to your spouse. So whereas before, they may not have looked at the things that you were doing on Facebook or any of those things. So if you do keep your Facebook page, then what you want to do is you need to open up and have those passwords available. They should have full access to your phone because you're saying you want to rebuild trust. And the only way to rebuild trust is for that person to feel like you have nothing to hide. And so that's hard. I know that's hard. But you have to do that if you really want to rebuild the trust, you want to rebuild this relationship, then you have to allow them that access. You have to also acknowledge the pain that you have put them through. Acknowledge the hurt, what you've done. You have to be sincere about that and totally remorseful. Sometimes what happens is, the person who has cheated don't want to talk about the whole situation anymore. They want it to be over with. They don't want to talk anymore. They're like, okay, this is done. This is a wrap. I don't want to talk about it anymore. Sometimes they get angry, right, with you because you keep bringing it up and they don't want to hear it anymore. But the person who has been cheated on, they need that. They need to talk about it. And you need to be accommodating to talk about it. You can't be angry about it because this is something that you have done. You have caused this in your relationship. And so you have to be willing to go through whatever that means to get through this situation. So they need time to process. They need time to feel like they can trust again and all those things. But if you are able to really and truly show your remorse, that you're truly sorry, that you're truly apologetic, then, that gives them a little bit of something to hang on to. Because if they know that you really and truly still love them, that you really do love them, then, and that you're really sorry, that does give them a path forward to starting to trust again, to forgive. Okay, so that brings us to the next step, step number 2. Step number 2 is about having forgiveness. And that's having forgiveness on both sides. So what I mean by that, I know, forgiveness is hard. So we've talked about that. It's hard to forgive after someone has literally ripped your heart out. They have broken your heart. They've caused you pain. You're probably feeling depressed, angry, disappointed, sad. All these feelings that come up. You are feeling that, and rightfully so. And so it's hard to go and say, okay, now I'm going to forgive this person, because really in your mind you're wondering, okay, are they going to do it again? Or when they're going to do it again? You're always on the lookout and the watch, which is why that person needs to ensure that you feel comfortable and confident, when they're going through this, that they have to give you the reassurance, because they're the one who has destroyed the relationship, and they are the ones who needs to repair it, and they need to make you feel safe and secure within the relationship. And if you don't feel that, and they can't make you feel that and convince you that they really do love you, you're not seeing that they're really sincere about their words or their actions, because sometimes they, sometimes it is just words, and it may not necessarily be what's sincere. But as a married couple, couples know each other, and you know the difference between whether they're sincere about what they're saying in their apology, or whether they're just giving you some words because they just want to get through this process as quickly as they possibly can. So when it comes to forgiveness, first of all, the person that has been cheated on, it have to make a tough decision. It is hard, but if you have to decide whether or not you are going to forgive them or you're not going to forgive them. It's one or the other. You're either going to forgive them or you're not going to forgive them. And if you can't forgive them, then you can't get through the process to get to trusting and to rebuilding the relationship again. There's no way that you could do that. So, but it still takes time. So they can't rush you through it. They can't rush you to forgiveness. So they have to give you time. Take time to process everything, because it's grieving. Basically, as the person who has been cheated on, you are going through the grieving process. And that grieving process is just like in death. When you're grieving your loved one that has gone on, first of all, you start out, you're in denial. Second, you're just angry, you're mad about it. Then you go to bargaining about it. Then all of a sudden you just feel like, okay, you're just sad, you're depressed about it. And then finally, the final step is that you accept what has happened, and you just accept it. The person who has cheated also needs to forgive, but they need to forgive themselves, because as the person who has cheated, if you sincerely want your relationship to work and you are sincerely sorry and remorseful for what you have done, then you likely feel disappointed in yourself, you're ashamed of yourself, and it's very difficult for you to go forward and to be around other people because you feel like you have let them down. If you have children that's in the relationship, you feel like you've let your children down, you've let your family down. Not only did you let your spouse down, and then you feel like, okay, you have let yourself down. So you have to learn to forgive yourself as well. So if you are the cheater, you have to learn to forgive. But you can only get here is if you are truly remorseful and apologetic and sorry for what has happened already. So say you've made this decision. So as a couple, you have made the decision to forgive. So the non-cheater has decided, okay, I'm gonna forgive my spouse. And the cheater has decided, I think I'm ready to forgive myself to move forward. And so even after that decision has made, so yeah, that's a decision. You put a stake in the ground at that point. But there's still gonna be flashbacks, constant flashbacks, reminders of what has already happened. Constantly, every time that you see that person, messing with their phone, you're wondering, who are they talking to? Who are they texting? And all of those things. But what you have to do to keep your sanity, it could drive you crazy to constantly be concerned and worried about this going forward. But in order to keep your sanity, what you have to reflect on is, what are the behaviors that your spouse is displaying now? What are those behaviors? Are they being open and honest? Are they fully transparent? Are you able to just go pick up their phone and use their phone, or do whatever you choose to do in their phone, their email, or whatever it may be? Do you have full access to things? Are they showing you, or are they trying to show the love that they have for you? Are they doing things different in the relationship? Those are the things that you need to pay attention to in order to get through the times when you're having the flashbacks and you're just having those reminders of what has happened and how it happened and all those things. And then you just got to keep moving forward, because in order to get to a different place, you can't keep looking backwards. You got to just keep moving forward to get to a different place. So it does not mean, if you decide to forgive them, it does not mean that you accept what they have done, that you condone what they have done, because that is definitely not the case. It's just that you have made a decision that your marriage is worth saving, that there is something left in this relationship and you feel like it's worth it to try again and to try to save it. And so you've made the decision that you're just gonna move forward with that. I'll say, be cautiously optimistic. So be cautiously optimistic. So you want to be optimistic. That doesn't mean you disregard any caution, because we're still rebuilding trust at this point, right? We don't fully trust at this time. And so in another stat that I'll give you is that typically it can take anywhere from a year to 2 years to really and truly rebuild trust in a relationship after it has been broken. 1 to 2 years. That means that's a lot of work. That's a long time, when you really think about it. It's a long time. So you may have found out about something like last week. Just think about it. You have another year or two before you're going to really work through this, if you decide that that's what you're going to do. Okay? So step 3 in this process is that now both of you have to be willing to rebuild the trust in the relationship. So just because the cheating spouse has apologized and they're sorry and they really are sincere and all those things, and now you have decided that you will forgive them, doesn't mean that the two of you are going to decide, yes, let's continue to move forward and let us try to rebuild this trust and rebuild this relationship. So, but at this point, you've decided that you're going to forgive, and that maybe at this point you've decided that, yes, we want to try to save this marriage. So what you have to do is start working on the relationship. You have to deal with the issues and the problems that were in the relationship prior to the infidelity. So some of the things you have to do as a couple, you have to ask some difficult questions, difficult questions of yourself, and, just to assess this. And this is something that I do with couples, is both of them need to sit back and they need to answer these questions separately. This is not a joint exercise. It's not based on what she said or what he said. It's based on, what do you think, and I want to see what your thoughts are individually. The first question to ask is, were you feeling happy and fulfilled before this infidelity situation occurred? Were you feeling that? And you have to soul search. So, one of the things about coaching is that it's a lot of deep thought. It's a lot of inner work. So meaning you have to deal with your inner self. What are the thoughts and the feelings that you have and the perspectives that you have in your life that kind of drives the things that you do each and every day. And so you have to do this work. Nobody else can do it for you. You hear people say, before you get married, you need to love yourself first. Well, this is exactly what I'm saying, is that somewhere along the way, there's maybe some disconnect. And so you need to go back and reassess. So were you feeling happy and fulfilled before the infidelity? The next question for them to ask is, have your needs been met in the relationship? That to be honest, right? So at this point in the relationship, you've already experienced the infidelity. You already know that there are problems in this relationship. So now is the time to be honest, both of you, to be honest about what you feel about this relationship and to answer it honestly. You have nothing to lose at this point. So answer it honestly. Have your needs been met in the relationship? And then also ask yourself, have I voiced my needs to my spouse? So have you been voicing these things to your spouse since you've been married? The fourth thing to do is to assess, what is it that you think about your spouse? So first of all, you want to say, has my spouse's needs been fulfilled? So you want to assess that yourself, like based upon what you think and what you see and feel about your relationship. Do you believe that your spouse's needs have been fulfilled? And then finally, the fifth question to ask is, have you been listening to and been curious about what your spouse wants or their desires? Have you even been interested? You know, sometimes we get busy, and especially if you're in a household where there are children involved, it's very easy to get busy with the children, busy with their activities, busy working, and that you really don't have a lot left to give. And so it may not be intentional that you're just ignoring them, or, you know, you're not able to give them that sort of attention, but it happens. So whether it's intentional or not, but if it happened, then we need to address it, okay? So those are the 5 things, 5 questions that you should be asking. And then you need to eliminate blaming, because that's not going to carry the relationship forward. So even though you're hurt, it's painful, you have to not continue to blame, because all it does is it seeks to punish and humiliate the other person. That's the only point of blaming someone, is that you want them to be punished and you want them to feel humiliated. You want them to feel like the scum of the earth, which they probably already do. And you want them to feel the pain that you're feeling. And that's the reason that we do that. We blame because we want somebody else to feel just as bad as we feel, because what you have done to us is bad. So we want that. And so, but in order to move that marriage forward, you have to be willing to stop that blaming and you've made the decision to forgive and try to move forward. Another thing you need is joint accountability. So the 2 of you need to sit down and talk and communicate with each other. You both have to be accountable to the relationship. It takes 2. You can't have a relationship with one spouse without the other. Need both. First of all, talk about, have you both failed each other? Like, how have we failed each other? You're not going to move forward until you have these deep discussions. Sometimes we don't want to talk about these type of things, like, how do I just bring this up? Well, you should be scheduling some time with each other to say, we need to have some time, some one-on-one time where we can talk, and we need to have some serious conversations and have these discussions so that you can get this marriage onto the track and the path that you wanted, so that it can become better than it ever was before. So you have to communicate with each other. You can't walk around the house with the big elephant in the room and just ignoring the situation. You need to address it. If you don't address it, then you'll find yourself right back in this situation again eventually. So that's one thing. The second thing is you need to talk about, how can you act differently? What can you do differently? What behaviors do you need to be doing differently that is going to help move this marriage forward? What things are you going to change about the relationship? And some of that comes into those questions that you were asking yourself, those 5 questions that you were asking yourself about the relationship, about yourself, about your spouse. Some of those questions and those answers that come out of that should play a part in this piece when you're starting to have the conversations together. Because if you remember, you are both answering these questions separately, but at some point you need to come together to talk about those things and see where there are differences and where there are similarities. And so in the case where there are differences, you may want to address them, or maybe they are similarities that you need to address, because maybe both of you agree that you're not getting the attention that you should be getting in order to be able to move forward. So I have gone through these 3 steps. So 3 steps to rebuilding trust and a relationship. So the first one being The cheating spouse must be sincerely remorseful and apologetic. Number 2, both spouses have to be willing to forgive. And number 3, both spouses have to be willing to move forward and trust again and rebuild the relationship. Now, I know it is hard. It is hard to think about trusting somebody who has done you wrong. But if you really love them, you really want to save your marriage, you really want this relationship, then these are just things that, are first steps to getting there. There are a number of steps in this process because, you may have to learn to communicate with each other again. You may need to, resolve, whatever issues. Maybe there are money problems that's in the relationship. Maybe there are intimacy issues that are in the relationship. So you'll have to deal with those things. But as you start to come together, you start to address them and talk about them, you can come up with a plan, an approach of, how can you make it better? What can you do to move forward? Reminding you that there will be ups and downs in this relationship, period. There are ups and downs in a relationship even when there isn't infidelity. So there's going to be ups and downs. There's going to be hurt, and there's going to be resentment. There's going to be a grieving process. Remember the grieving process: denial, anger, bargaining, sadness, and then acceptance. So both of you will go through a whirlwind of emotions. But each of you have to go through your own process. No two people are the same. No two people process situations the same. So you'll go through your own process. But again, it starts with being apologetic and sincerely remorseful. So until you can get to that first step, there's no need to go any further. There's nothing else you can do. You have to get through the first step. So perhaps you might need some professional help to get you there. And so that's where you have couples therapy, couples boot camps, couples counseling. Perhaps it's individual as well. You have life coaching as well. So, for me, I am a life coach, and I work to move people forward. I want to move you forward. And so I work with people who have made the decision that they want to try to move forward. Now, when I work with them, it doesn't mean necessarily that they're going to decide to stay together. So I want to be honest, because what happens through a coaching process is that each person starts to evolve. They become connected with who they are as a person. And sometimes they decide that, they are not compatible with each other. They may learn that, I'm really not compatible with this person. And they will decide to divorce. And that is totally their decision. If that's the choice that they want to make, then I will help them to move forward so that they can have an amicable divorce. If they decide that they want to stay together, then we will work to help them to stay together, and not only stay together, but they can have a thriving, flourishing relationship with each other once again. So if you're interested, I'll just tell you a little bit about me. Again, I'm Laquita Joseph. I'm a relationship coach. I'm with Copper Penny Coaching, and I help couples turn their failing marriages into flourishing and loving relationships full of appreciation, passion, and understanding. I also help them to reboot and reconnect so that they can regain the friendship and the fun that they once had in their marriage. So you want to make it better than ever. So no matter what you've been through, you can be able to stand and say, I don't look like what I have been through. And so I say that. And so if you are interested in getting some coaching, maybe you want some one-on-one coaching, maybe you feel like maybe it's time to work on yourself as a person and an individual. I do that for couples as well, because sometimes, one spouse doesn't want to come. Sometimes they're not on the same page about coming together. and you don't have to come together, because sometimes transformation can occur with one person and one individual, because if you change, it'll force that other person to make a change or get out, one way or the other. You know, they're either going to accept your changes and want to be on board, or they are not, and that's really what you're aiming for, because at the end of the day, you want to be a fully whole person. You want to be able to be who you are in the relationship. So if it sounds like you feel like, you know, you need that extra boost or extra help, then please go to my website. It's www.copperpennycoaching.com/free session. And I will give you a free session so that you can try it out. You can see what it's like to be coached, free of charge. You don't have to give any credit cards or anything like that up front. It's a totally free session. If you know someone else who maybe could utilize this service, please send them to my website. It's www.copperpennycoaching.com/free session. Okay? All right, I thank you for joining tonight, and I look forward to seeing you next week at the same time, same place. Bye.